Hey, it's Aunt Shazy. If you're a fan of aviation history, aerospace technology, or just love looking at massive historic aircraft, you have to put the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum in Denver on your list. This isn't just a place to look at old planes, it's a deep dive into the engineering marvels that defined the 20th century. In this video, we're going to explore the history of this unique space, what you can expect to see, and how to get the most out of your visit. Let's start with the history of this location first. The museum is located at the former Lowry Air Force Base, which has its own fascinating history as a training center for pilots and ground crews during the mid-20th century. Before the museum was established, thousands of men and women trained in areas like armaments, bombardier instruction, crew training, and photography to support the United States during World War II and the Cold War. The base officially opened in 1938 and was named after Francis Brown Lowry, an aerial observer who was killed during World War I. At the time, military aviation was rapidly evolving, and the Army needed a centralized location for training. One of the most recognizable surviving structures from the original base is Hangar No. It was completed in 1939 and is the location of the museum today, so the building is an artifact in and of itself. Did you know in the 1950s, while the Air Force Academy was being built in nearby Colorado Springs, the first class actually took place at Lowry? I'm embarrassed to say I did not know that before coming here. Another significant chapter in Lowry's history involved missile technology. The base was home to the first operational Titan I intercontinental ballistic missile training program. During the height of the Cold War tensions, personnel at Lowry learned how to operate and maintain some of America's most advanced nuclear deterrent systems. This transformed the installation from a traditional aviation training center into a critical component of America's strategic defense structure. Over its decades of service, more than 1.1 million military members passed through the base for training. But by the late 1980s and early 1990s, military downsizing and budget restructuring led to major changes throughout the armed forces. Under the federal base realignment and closure process, Lowry Air Force Base was selected for closure. The base officially ceased military operations in 1994, ending more than 5 decades of continuous service. Luckily, local volunteers saved the hangar from being destroyed, eventually turning it into one of the nation's best aerospace museums. Unlike the National Museum of World War II Aviation in Colorado Springs, and yes, I've done a video on that museum, this museum is not located in an active airport, so planes can't fly in and out. Let's just say there was a lot of dust on the roofs of some of those aircraft. But there's a reason for that. The runways at Lowry's had been removed in the 1960s, so the planes you see here are all trucked in, usually at night when there's less traffic. Now, about the museum's setup. They have basically broken the museum into 4 sections: family and kid fun exhibits, history enthusiasts, subsonic, and supersonic. Honestly, the only area we didn't explore was the kids' play zone. Let's talk about family and kids areas first. Star Wars fans will love the X-Wing. It was created for marketing the movie, came to the museum in 1999, and is one of 7 replicas built at 3/4 scale. The one at the museum actually traveled to Japan, and it's signed by Harrison Ford, George Lucas, and the 2 men who played Chewbacca and R2-D2, and more. Now, how does that tie into an air and space museum? Just because it's science fiction doesn't mean the movie series didn't inspire thousands of pilots. The museum is also an active center for STEM education. They offer all kinds of interactive exhibits and flight simulators that let you experience what it would feel like to be in the cockpit. It's a fantastic way to learn about the physics of flight and the history of space exploration in a way that's engaging and fun. So let's talk about what kind of aircraft you'll see when you're here. Not that I will get to all of them. In the supersonic class, you'll find the F-4E Phantom II, a Grumman F-14 Tomcat, an F-105D Thunder Chief, an FB-111A Aardvark, an F-100D Super Sabre, an F-104C Starfighter, an F-102A Delta Dagger, an F-101B Voodoo, and a MiG-23 Flogger. They used to have an F-106, but it was sent to Peterson Space Force Base, and yes, I've done a video on that museum too. I have a thing for museums, especially aircraft museums. But what many consider the jewel of the collection is the B-1A Lancer. It's technically a GB-1A, which was used as a training airframe. Developed during the Cold War, the B-1A was designed for high-speed, long-range missions. Although the original program was canceled, it later evolved into the B-1B, which is still in use today. The subsonic collection includes an A-7D Corsair II, an AV-8B Harrier II Plus, an EA-6B Prowler, an EB-57E Canberra, and a Learjet 24. And you can't miss the massive B-52B Stratofortress that greets you just outside the museum's front entrance. The colossal bomber was originally created as an RB-52B for long-range reconnaissance operations and was the 7th B-52 ever built. It was later used for avionics testing and eventually came to Lowry Air Force Base as a training airframe for munitions loading instruction. History enthusiasts will also be excited to know that the museum has a wonderful collection of homemade planes and helicopters, including an Alexander Eagle Rock built by a young Al Mooney. They used to have two, but now they only have one. They also have a homemade helicopter built in the 1970s by do-it-yourselfer inventor Art Murray. The Model T was the sixth one he built and was fully inspected and approved by the FAA. It made its first flight in 1974 and was donated to the museum in 2005. There's also a Douglas B-18A Bolo and a really interesting exhibit on the UH-1M Huey helicopter. While we were there, a docent gave a talk about his personal experience flying it in Vietnam. We were fascinated and really enjoyed hearing his stories. There are also plenty of exhibits with individual rooms focused on the Colorado Air National Guard, military uniforms, stories from the Colorado skies, and the Colorado Aviation Hall of Fame. One especially cool area is called Colorado's Astronauts, in their own words. In the Wright exhibit, there's a piece of fabric that Neil Armstrong carried to the moon from the original 1903 Wright Flyer. Orville Wright had given it to the Air Force, which later gave it to Neil. Neil's son David eventually donated it to the museum. Another fascinating artifact is a flag signed by Charles Lindbergh when he was in Denver during a cross-country tour. The museum also has some really interesting displays on Colorado's contribution to the aerospace industry, as well as stories from the veterans who served at Lowry. Even though the planes are the big draw, don't miss all the other aviation artifacts while you are there, like the bombs. There's an Mk-28 hydrogen bomb weighing between 1,700 and 2,230 pounds, and a B-53 nuclear bomb that weighs 8,850 pounds. No wonder they call it a bunker buster. Did you know the last B-53 was officially disassembled on October 25, 2011? There are technically 3 floors: the main hangar floor, the second level where you can learn more about the history of Lowry Air Force Base and get a better look at some of the planes that are hanging from the ceiling, and then there's a third observation deck where you can get a cool view of the area around the museum. For example, the area where they used to conduct nuclear training is now home to Big Bear Ice Arena. There's just so much to see in this museum. Don't forget to look up. There's a Christian Eagle. Did you know you could purchase it from the factory or buy it as a kit? It was based on the famous Pitts Special and was designed by Frank Christensen as an unlimited class aerobatic aircraft. This plane was used for competition, sports cross-country flying, and advanced aerobatic training. Developed in the 1970s, more than 1,000 have been produced. There's a Piper J3 Cub. Because of how economical, rugged, and reliable they were, thousands of these were used to train pilots during World War II. You'll see a Wizard ultralight airplane, which developed from simple hang gliders. They emerged in the 1980s and over the decades have spawned into various incarnations. And there's a Red Baron hang glider. Talk about a low-cost way to explore the skies, and a way to not deal with the red tape of the FAA. There's just too many planes for me to go into detail on them all. You could spend hours in the individual galleries. The uniform exhibit has a cool collection of unique uniforms and gear from the early days of aviation through to present day. The Colorado Air National Guard Heritage Committee has brought together an incredible collection of artifacts, photographs, and paintings that trace the remarkable journey of Colorado's Air National Guard all the way back to 1923, when it became one of the very first air units of the entire National Guard. From the roaring early days of military aviation to the sleek jet age of the 1950s, the exhibit captures the excitement of Colorado's legendary Minutemen jet demonstration team, whose daring aerial performances rivaled the famous Blue Angels and Thunderbirds after becoming the National Guard's official aerobatic team. But the story doesn't stop there. The collection also honors the courage and sacrifice of Guard members who served during Vietnam and the Gulf Wars, preserving a powerful legacy of service, innovation, and Colorado pride. And once again, I'd like to take a quick minute to thank my dad for his service. He served in Vietnam in the Air Force from 1966 to 1967. Throughout the museum, you'll see displays of camera and photo interpretation equipment since thousands of military photographers trained at Lowry. Many of the planes were training frames during the days of Lowry operations, but many of them are just plain cool to see. Like the Hiller XROE-1 rotorcycle that was designed in the 1950s to be flown by just one person. It could be folded up for transport and quickly assembled in the field, making it ideal for scouting, rescue, and short-distance missions. Or Hope 1. This light sports aircraft was flown by Michael Combs, whose journey is nothing short of incredible. In 2003, Michael suffered a life-threatening health crisis that caused him to temporarily die and lose most of his memory. But even in recovery, one thing never left him: his dream of becoming a pilot. That dream became the Flight for the Human Spirit, a mission designed to prove that the impossible is possible and that it's never too late to chase what matters most. Michael set out to do something no one had ever done before: fly a light sport aircraft to all 50 states. He completed his goal in Hawaii, but no, he didn't fly over the ocean. He had it shipped there. And if you're an avid aviation buff, check their website before you go. They often host special events, guest speakers, and even opportunities to see restoration projects in progress. But if you're planning to visit in person, the museum is located in the Lowry neighborhood and is easily accessible from downtown Denver. It's also very accessible if you have mobility issues, whether in a wheelchair or walking issues. The entire main hangar is flat, easy to navigate, and offers plenty of room to move between exhibits. It's a great way to spend a few hours exploring without the need for strenuous physical activity. Overall, visiting the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum is a must-see experience for any curious learner. It's a perfect blend of history, technology, and community pride that captures the spirit of exploration. It reminds us of how far we have come in such a short time and inspires us to think about where we might go next. If you can't make it to the museum for yourself, don't forget, check out their online resources. Have you been to the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum? What was your favorite plane or display or artifact that you saw? Leave me a comment, I'd love to hear. And as always, thanks for watching. Now hit that like button for me and go watch one of my other aircraft museum videos.